And now, broadcasting from deep behind enemy lines in the occupied territory of the Socialist Republic of California, your host, former California State Assemblyman and Governor candidate, Tim Donnelly.
Welcome to the Radio Free California Network. I'm your host, former California State Assemblyman and Governor candidate, Tim Donnelly, and we have got a great show planned for you today. You don't want to miss a single minute of it, and we're going to jump right in. I happen to be reading. Yes, I can read. And there was this incredible headline, and let me just read it to you, and then you tell me if I'm crazy. The non-deported ICE still releasing criminal aliens at a rapid pace. When I read that, all I could think of was the non-deported, like the non-dead, like zombies. Like you got these people, they won't actually enforce the law, so they won't deport them. They're criminals, and they're dumping them back on our streets so that they can have a zombie apocalypse. I don't know. But I thought we would get the author of the article on, who is the Policy Studies Director at Center for Immigration Reform, Jessica Vaughn. Jessica, welcome to the Tim Donnelly Show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Hey, your headline really caught my eye. This is crazy. I don't think most Americans know we do not enforce our immigration laws anymore at all, do we?
No, and the reason the public doesn't know is because the Obama administration goes around telling people that it is deporting record numbers of people, and other people in the media just parrot this without understanding what's really going on. They've cooked their books to make it look like they're deporting a lot of people, but what's happening is there's almost no enforcement in the interior of the country, which is what most Americans have to grapple with in their daily lives, and that's where we have all of these illegal aliens that ICE agents encounter but are not allowed to deport. Most of them are referred to them because they've been arrested by state and local law enforcement agencies. ICE officers under Obama administration policies are forced to release them instead of deport them, and nobody should be surprised that they go on to commit more crimes.
Well,
these are very preventable crimes.
Yeah, I mean, in California, we had an individual who had two identities. Surprise, surprise. He had a driver's license from Utah, and he came to California. In Utah, everybody said he was such a nice guy. He did a great job cutting my lawn. He was the best gardener we ever had. What a super fellow. And then he comes to California, and he assassinates two cops. Just shot him point blank in the head with what the left likes to call an assault weapon. It was just a rifle that can shoot bullets, but he used it. First of all, he got it. I don't know how you get a gun if you're an illegal alien in this country, but you can.
Well, that's a federal offense, felony to be an illegal alien in possession of a firearm.
Sure, but we don't enforce any of the laws. We have made California in particular a sanctuary state with what we call the Trust Act. I call it the Antitrust Act, and the California Sanctuary State Act. But in the case of these, it was something like 30,000 illegals who were deportable were released onto our streets in 2014.
That's right. It was more 30,500 in 2014, and already halfway through the current fiscal year, it's more than 10,000. And they just keep going on and committing crimes. There was a story out of Kentucky today about an illegal alien who had been busted 3 times for drunk driving and driving without a license. On his fourth DUI, they finally turned him over to ICE. ICE held him for 8 days and released him. So he's one of the 30-some thousand that got released that year. And then just the other day, he drove drunk again, surprise, and killed a man.
Oh, my
riding
word.
His bike on the road.
So basically,
and this is repeated over and over again. They're all tragic and all preventable.
And this is because you have politicians leading law enforcement agencies who bend to political pressure. I mean, I saw the DHS Secretary Jay Johnson testifying before Congress, he sounded like some kind of weenie Republican or weenie Democrat who couldn't speak the truth if it jumped out of its seat and bit him in the face. And yet his job is to protect the public, but his politics, not public safety.
Right. His job, or the job that he has been assigned by his boss, the president, has been to find ways to dismantle immigration enforcement from within by writing new policies that ICE agents have to follow, or they're threatened with disciplinary action that says you will not deport anyone unless the following circumstances exist. They have to be convicted of a felony, even if they were deported before. Unless it was a recent deportation, they're to ignore that prior deportation order, and they're to give the criminal aliens all the bites at the apple, all the opportunities to have hearings and seek the relief from immigration judges, instead of doing what the law allows, which is for them to be sent home promptly and without a second look. If we can't even deport convicted criminals, we certainly can't enforce any other aspects of immigration law that keep us safe and preserve job opportunities.
Jessica, you are not very understanding, because I mean seriously, these convicted criminals are tomorrow's Democrats. These illegal aliens that come into this country are already counted as Democrat votes, and of course the Republicans don't stand up against. They never mount any effective opposition, because the public generally doesn't realize that most Republicans are owned by some of the same forces, the same political forces that want a full-blown amnesty so they can basically have an indentured servant class.
Well, that's true, and it's certainly true of some of the California Republicans, although not all of them. But the numbers of Republicans in the House of Representatives who are not beholden to the mass immigration promoters is growing.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Right. That's part of the problem is, the leadership and other members of Congress who, are think that either they're afraid of offending people by calling for more moderate levels of immigration and for enforcing our laws, or they're they're bought and paid for by the employers who want cheap employees. And
well, we've got guys out here who ran for Congress, and they couldn't get the establishment money behind them unless they swore to support amnesty. They actually signed a letter, signed a document. It's despicable out here in California, but I agree with you. The rest of the country is probably wondering, so the Republicans, are they really in control there in Washington? Because it doesn't seem like it. Obama's riding roughshod over them, anything and everything he wants. But Obama finally, he hasn't really run into a log jam in the Congress, but he ran into one in the courts.
Yes, because 26 states said they just weren't going to sit there and take it for the president to announce that he was going to give work permits to nearly 5 million illegal aliens, and the states were going to have to pick up the tab. And led by Texas, Texas and 25 other states filed suit in federal court, and a judge bought their arguments and said, "Yeah, you're right. This is going to harm the states, and the president has abandoned immigration enforcement. And not only that, he didn't go through the proper procedure for changing laws and regulations, and so he put a stop to it, and now they have to follow it." But yeah, that's been the biggest setback for the administration and their agenda for mass immigration. And we're very fortunate that, and they've pulled out all the stops trying to convince the judge to, change his mind or get his colleagues to overturn him. But the other day, the appeals court upheld what the first judge said and said, yeah, the Obama administration doesn't stand very much chance of being able to win in court. So thank goodness the clock is probably going to run out on this amnesty, and it will never happen. But unless congressional Republicans do it for him.
Oh, my word. One small step for the people. It was nice to see that judge, one man, took a stand, defended the Constitution. More importantly than what I think of an issue is they swore an oath to defend the Constitution. Hey, we've got to take a break. Can we keep you over for one segment?
Sure.
Okay. We are talking with Jessica Vaughn. She is the Policy Studies Director at the Center for Immigration Studies, and she has written an extraordinary article. It's up on our Facebook and our website called The Non-Deported. I know it sounds like zombies, doesn't it? Hey, 323-746-TALK. It's a lot more deadly than zombies, by the way. 323-746-8255. If you want to weigh in on this topic, we'll be right back.
That I'm gonna go meet with right?
Three 323-746-TALK is our number, and we are talking about an article written by Jessica Vaughn, who is the Policy Studies Director at Center for Immigration Studies, called The Non-Deported. ICE still releasing criminal aliens at a rapid pace. And just before the break, we found out, Jessica, you said it was Kentucky, where an individual was killed by someone driving drunk who had previously been pulled over for DUI, not deported. And you also mentioned in your article that a murderer and a rapist had been set free by the Obama administration in 2014. Can you elaborate?
Oh, yeah. Well, more than one in 2014. In fact, that year there were about, 175 homicide convicts and 373 people who had been convicted of sexual assault.
Okay, slow down. I want to stop right there. 175, you said, convicted of homicide.
Correct.
So murder.
Yes, or all different versions of it. Sometimes it's, murder of a family member. They have lots of different charges. Negligent manslaughter with a weapon. But most of them are simple homicide. Well,
wait a minute. I want to make one thing perfectly clear. Here at the Tim Donnelly Show, we do not discriminate. We don't care what type of weapon you use. We just care that you committed the act of murder, whether it's accidental or whether it's in a car where you're driving down the highway and you're drunk. That's just as damaging to a family than if you pulled out a gun or a knife or a hammer or a baseball bat or whatever else people use to kill people. But I mean, I'm absolutely shocked that this is not like front page news when the whole country is burning. I mean, we're burning city after city after city for one black criminal who attacked officers and tried to get an officer's gun. And we've turned the entire country upside down, but we have 175 murderers let out on the streets and nobody's saying anything.
You're right. I mean, obviously crime is not a job Americans won't do. There is no reason to let illegal aliens who've been convicted of homicide, of all things, to be released back into American communities instead of deported. Now, the Obama administration hides behind some factors that they say are out of their control, although they are not really. They will hide behind a Supreme Court decision of about a little over 10 years ago that said that if someone's home country won't take them back, you have to let them out of detention after 6 months. But the administration just releases them, doesn't tell anyone about it. They don't try to put any pressure or leverage on these other countries.
Well, and more,
for not taking
Jessica,
them back.
More than likely, we're giving these countries financial aid.
That's right.
We could cut off the aid, or we could just do an airdrop, parachute them in, fly over their country, throw them out of the plane with parachutes on, and say, "Hey, have a nice day." Give them a ham sandwich and a Coke, unless a ham sandwich offends them. Then just let them go hungry. I mean, for crying out loud, my producer is going nuts in here in the production booth. She is apoplectic that we don't actually just enforce the law.
Right. All we would have to do with these cases, there are a bunch of countries that won't take their deportees back. Cuba is probably the worst offender. Now, of course, the president has just recently been negotiating with Cuba over some things, and a lot of people, including me, think that this issue of not taking back their deportees should have been a condition for opening up relationships with Cuba.
Yeah, but I don't believe that Barack Obama, or I don't think I said that right. I don't believe that Barack Obama believes that he is actually president of a country. I think he thinks he's president of the world. And there are no borders, and he doesn't believe in any kind of immigration enforcement whatsoever, because I don't think you can name, because I certainly can't, a single bit of enforcement that he has done, period.
There once there is an act of violence or someone gets killed, usually then, ICE is allowed to make an effort to deport people. But if there's any resistance put up to it whatsoever, then they're told to stand down. And that's how we end up with hundreds of people who've been convicted of homicide still being here.
So we're putting the American public at risk because of the heckler's veto, because of a few countries and who have infiltrated our country. They've infiltrated our journalists. They've infiltrated our media, our education system, where they keep pushing this propaganda. And they keep telling the same lies over and over again until they become the truth. Countries like Mexico that do not even allow any kind of political engagement, or you're thrown in jail and deported out of the country, are driving our immigration policy.
Right. All of the, right now the administration cares more about the illegal aliens here demanding to be part of our society than enforcing the laws that were passed through our democratic process that are designed to, protect our national interest and the job opportunities and other things for Americans. There's no question about that. Immigration enforcement is just not important, not something taken seriously. It has been something to be undermined under this administration. And you can see it, despite what the agency spokespersons will tell the media about, how great a job they're doing. If you look at ICE's own records, you find that year after year, the number of people deported from the country has plummeted. And even the number of convicted criminals being deported has plummeted.
Well, I saw...
They're not allowed to... ICE agents will tell you they sit around all day. They're told not to work.
This is insane. It's got to be absolutely destroying the morale of the Border Patrol. It's got to be destroying the morale in the entire Department of Homeland Security, ICE, Border Patrol, and everyone else. But they're busy. They actually built a facility in San Fernando Valley. This might encourage you. To spy on Americans. The Department of Homeland Security has built a facility to gather metadata, just like the NSA is doing, on Americans. To heck with the border. They aren't going to spy on the border. They aren't going to spy on employers who are exploiting and abusing people and bringing them in illegally and turning them into a modern-day slave force. They don't care about that. So no law enforcement, but they're going to spy on us.
My goodness, that's it. Certainly seems backwards, doesn't it?
Well, we are behind enemy lines here in California. Let me tell you, but Jessica, I really appreciate the work that you're doing there at the Center for Immigration Studies, and hope that you'll come back on when you've uncovered some more information. But this is an excellent article. It's up at timdonnellyshow.com. And I also put a link to your blog, so if anybody wants to reach out to you, they can get in touch with you. But thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
No, my pleasure. Good work, and keep up the great work.
All right.
Hey, we have an action-packed show ahead. We're going to have John Fleischman on right after this break, talking about a little case that made it to the Supreme Court that could send shockwaves through California congressional districts. The lines could be completely redrawn. You don't want to miss something that could affect you. 323-746-TALK, 323-746-8255 is our number. TimDonnellyShow.com is where we communicate with you. We got great information on our guests up there. Stay tuned.
Don't you think it's about time you treat yourself or someone you love to something very special? Well, Ozell Jewelers, the finest jewelry store in the high desert, is known throughout the high desert for having the largest variety of fine-looking jewelry and gifts for every special occasion. Ozell custom designs and manufactures their own jewelry, so you'll be able to find exclusive, one-of-a-kind, stunning styles you won't find anywhere else in Southern California. If you're looking for fine jewelry at unbeatable prices, Ozell Jewelers is the place to go. Show appreciation to that special person in your life with something special to cherish forever. Ozell Jewelers, voted best jewelers in the high desert by the Daily Press regularly for years. Ozell Jewelers has been putting smiles on high desert faces for over 30 years. Ozell Jewelers in Rancho Cucamonga, Palm Desert, and Amargosa Road by Red Lobster in Victorville. Ozell Jewelers.
I was just perusing headlines and could not believe, wasn't even looking for it. And there's a murderer and another individual illegally in the country, got out of custody, headed for the border. I mean, there's an epidemic. And what we were talking about earlier is tied into the story that we're about to cover. The Supreme Court has decided that it wants to hear a case, and it could have a huge impact on California, even though it's a Texas case, and it has to do with whether or not you count districts based on total population or total voters. And we're going to bring on John Fleischman, who is he's a longtime observer of California politics. He is a relentless blogger, has one of the most popular blogs in California politics. John, welcome to the Tim Donnelly Show.
Hey, it's great to be here, Tim. You also forgot to mention a huge fan of Tim Donnelly. So thank you very much for being on the air and helping promote our constitutional principles to all of those that are listening.
Well, thank you, and thank you for joining us. Your article was, you took what could be kind of a boring topic, it's kind of in the weeds a little bit, but you made it very clear, and I mean, this could have major shockwaves. And by the way, I didn't mention your blog, which is it's FlashReport.org, correct?
Right. So I have a website, FlashReport.org. I also invite people to check out Breitbart California, where I'm the politics editor as well. So many people may know about Breitbart, but there's actually a button at the top of the page that says California. And they have a whole page just about California issues. As a matter of fact,
I get my morning coffee with Breitbart California, because everything you need to know is between there and your blog, and we can follow what's going on. But Yeah, it is a fantastic source.
But this, so this particular issue, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I heard you kind of explaining it to your listeners, but the nickel tours, you had two state senators from Texas who basically sued and said, hey, we don't think that we should have our districts made up of all the people who happen to live in it. We think it should be made up of the citizens who live in it, because the districts were being apportioned, including the total population, including those people in the country in violation of California immigration law. And so they actually sued and got turned down. They appealed, got turned down, and then the Supreme Court, in what everyone has said is a surprising and unexpected action, reached down to the appellate court and pulled it up and said, we think there's merit to having a discussion amongst the Supreme Court about this issue. And it goes to the question of one person, one vote, and the results of their decision could be quite dramatic, because and I mentioned this in the column, they could conceivably make a decision that new district political boundary lines for all the state legislative seats in the country, all the supervisor, commissioner seats in the country, city council, school board, water board, that they have to draw those districts to only include probably people that are eligible to vote, or at a minimum, people that are eligible to be in the country legally. And what that would mean as a practical matter is a reduction of the number of districts in areas with high, especially Latino immigrant population communities, who are largely illegal aliens. Although I think we're supposed to call them undocumented or something like that.
We don't do politically correct here. But by the way, I actually saw a sign in Texas. I keep hearing how great Texas is, but I saw a sign at the Falfurrias border checkpoint, and it said that they had apprehended like 327,000 pounds of drugs and some 24,000 undocumented aliens. And I thought, why are you guys getting political? They're not undocumented aliens. They're illegal aliens. That's the actual legal terminology within the law.
Sure.
And that's your mission statement, is to apprehend and enforce the law when you encounter persons who are of that category, illegal alien. You can be a resident alien as well.
Exactly.
But it's ludicrous. But this has not been dealt with since... Go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I was just saying the practical effect of a ruling like this is that it will shrink legislative and districts that have this, that are currently have a lot of this illegal alien population in their district, and it will then move more representation out to suburbs and out to more rural districts. And if you put a kind of a Republican-Democrat hat on it, this kind of a ruling would be a tremendous opportunity for Republicans.
Well, it would certainly hurt the cause of individuals like my former seatmate when I was in the Assembly, One Bill Gil Cedillo, who was elected by 8,000 people. So 8,000 voters, and he represents 500,000 people. Well, I don't know how many were actually registered or eligible to vote in his district, but if you couldn't count them... And he told me that he had illegal aliens walking door to door for him, manning his phone banks, basically electing him.
Yeah, this would make it more difficult, because once you exclude all of these illegal aliens from being part of a district, it means that you will have to have a significant number of registered voters, or at least legal citizens, in your district. So the districts will become a lot bigger in size, and the number of people voting in the elections in those districts will significantly increase. So it's actually a kind of a pro-democracy ruling if it comes down that way. Now, nobody knows what the court's going to do. It will be next year's court calendar, not this year. But, I mean, it certainly says something that they reached down and pulled this up into the court. It means that they're very interested in looking at this issue. And this has been a very aggressive Supreme Court. They're looking at possibly... there's a whole other issue having to do with possibly throwing out the current congressional district lines, and it's an interesting time for all of this.
Well, it is. And John, you can see clearly where there would be. I mean, if I was a lawyer, and I'm not, and I don't play one on TV, but if I was a lawyer, for my viewpoint on this, which is you should only count those who are at least eligible to vote when you're counting a district in which people are going to vote. The first argument I would make is Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, where it not only states that the federal government shall control the border and keep us free from invasion, which, of course, has been an epic failure, but it also says right after that it guarantees that we shall have a Republican form of government. Well, if you are in a district where the vast majority of people are not even eligible to vote, they're not even supposed to be in the country, and yet they're counted within your district, then you've been shortchanged in that your vote has been diluted.
Well, and it goes both ways, because also, as a result of that, there are going to be other districts where all of the residents, or virtually all of the residents that are non-immigrant, not illegal aliens, it's like your vote doesn't count as much, because all the voters, all the people that are eligible to vote, are no longer evenly dispersed amongst, say, all 40 state Senate districts or all 80 assembly districts. So in some districts, you've got a tiny group of people who are having the impact, like we talked about in Cedillo's district, 7,000 people voting. And the flip side is go down to some of the areas of Orange County or other areas where it's the exact opposite, and you have huge numbers of people voting, and it really diminishes the very republic that you just articulated is called for in our founding document. So I think it's good that they're bringing it up. It certainly highlights the importance of hopefully everybody staying safe and healthy on the Supreme Court for the next year, because we don't want this president appointing any more any more justices. And I also kind of talk about a little bit in my article, I mean, what you could predict what the fallout will be, right? If they make a ruling like this, then suddenly it's all the white people on the Supreme Court. It's going to be a race war. As we know, there's a professional class of people who like to, I don't know what you want to call it, use an entire community of people as props.
I call it race hustling. But you know what we need? You know what we need on this show, Bethany? We need that backup alert notification that a dump truck has, or a garbage truck or whatever, when it's backing up.
Yeah, it goes like beep, beep.
Yeah, we need that. Anytime the race card is going to be introduced, we need a warning, because it's every 5 seconds, it seems like, with the leftists. Hey, John, can you stay on with us for over one break and maybe keep us posted on what's going on up in Sacramento and continue this discussion? Yeah. Hey, we're talking with...
Although I would encourage all your listeners to get some Prozac in the commercial break then. We're going to talk about that.
Now you can see why I love him. We're talking to John Fleischman of the FleischmanReport.org, FlashReport.org, but he's also the political editor for Breitbart California, which I occasionally write for, and a whole lot of other great writers, including John. We're talking about an article that could have massive implications. 323-746-TALK is our number if you've got a question. And stay tuned. Don't touch that dial. Hey, if you're just tuning into the Tim Donnelly Show, shame on you. We started 50 minutes ago. 323-746-TALK is our number. We're talking to John Fleischman of FlashReport.org and Breitbart California political editor. He's written a great article on a Supreme Court decision that could completely transform districts, especially in a state like California. But, John, I just wanted to shift gears just for a minute and say, what in the heck is going on in Sacramento? I mean, we got Jerry Brown gone wild. We call it we have a segment on the show called Leftist Gone Wild, but Jerry Brown is always heavily featured. I mean, the dude, he wants to tax us into compliance. He wants to fine us into compliance if we take a shower that's 2 minutes too long, $500 fines, $10,000 fines. Now he wants to bankrupt California by getting in bed and bailing out Oregon's Obamacare. Is that true?
You know, I think part of the real tragedy of the whole situation with Jerry Brown is that, you know, here on your show, you know, truth prevails and facts are what they are. But I will tell you, the media, the mainstream media, the lame media, has gone out of their way to perpetuate some sort of myth that Jerry Brown is somehow more moderate or somehow he provides adult supervision to the Capitol. And as you just eloquently pointed out, he is a hard-line, left-wing ideologue, you know, and when you look at when all the bills at the end of session are put on his desk, he will veto 1 or 2 or 3 bills almost as fig leaves, and then he signs 98% of all of the bills that the ultra-liberal legislature puts on his desk. And
yeah, and they're John, they're not just pissing off Republicans; they're ticking off Democrats. We have a guest coming on later today who is a former Democrat from Berkeley. When you're losing people from Berkeley, you're doing something wrong, and you cannot argue with the fact, no one can, not effectively anyway, that the government has become the greatest threat to our freedom and to our future under Jerry Brown.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, right now you can't even turn on your television without seeing how in Sacramento the politicians have decided that state legislation and not parents are going to be responsible for what medications are given to your children, and it's a tragic, slippery slope.
You're talking about the forced vaccinations bills, SB 277.
Exactly. It's a terrible piece of legislation. Never mind I mean, imagine this. If you have a child and you vaccinate that child and they have a negative reaction, they are physically harmed by that vaccination, and you have other children, those other children, now you're in a family where it has been proven you have a bad reaction to vaccinations. This law makes no provision that even those siblings of the sick child cannot be exempted. You have to vaccinate them, or they can't get an education in public or private or parochial school.
Yeah,
I mean, I single that bill out because in my mind right now, it's the most egregious nanny state bill that I've seen. But there's just so many of them. They just go on.
Well, we are absolutely focused on that particular bill for good reason, and I'm surprised that there weren't any headlines when I attended the Democrat state convention. I mean, they put headlines up when I attend the Republican state convention because they know it'll make trouble for Republicans. But I went there with my NRA hat on, loud and proud, and was embraced by 1,000, maybe 1,200 protesters, mostly Democrats or former Democrats. And this is a problem for the leftists. They think they can get away with anything because they have for so long. But I think this bill in particular, John, as you said, it hits you on parental rights. It hits you on fundamental basic freedoms. And the chant they were saying there was, if there's a risk, there must be a choice. And I think that resonates with most Americans.
Yeah, well, I mean, it really goes back to the fact that for a lot of these liberals in Sacramento, it's like a religion, right? And so they actually believe that it is appropriate to move responsibility for young people in America away from their biological unit that created them and move that to the centralized government for decision making. And it's a scary step because of course next year it'll be, well, have your kids gotten their teeth cleaned 4 times a year? Have they seen a physician? Because if not, they can't go to school.
I mean, what if they partook of National Cheeseburger Day, which it is today? I mean, is the government going to come in and say you can't have a cheeseburger? I mean, are we going to go that far? By the way, just for the record, even though it is National Cheeseburger Day, every day is National Cheeseburger Day to me, so I didn't have a cheeseburger today just to be different.
Well, there you go. I'm going to make This call finds me in Portland, Oregon, but I'm going to find it. There must be an In-N-Out burger here somewhere.
Well, you go get one for us, John, and thank you for coming on the Tim Donnelly Show. Thank you for the great article, the great work you do following all of this insanity, and we hope that you'll come back and keep us informed.
All right, you got to take care, Tim.
Okay. Godspeed. Hey, that was John Fleischman of FlashReport.org and Breitbart California political editor, who is always on the cutting edge of what is going on in that insane city that rules over the state of California. Why do we have a city, a capital, that rules over us rather than rules at our consent? I'm you know what? I'm in rare form today. I'm getting all worked up. I mean, you had to turn the air conditioning on. It got so hot in here. Just from the content of what is in the headlines just today. Coming up, I'm going to talk about a U.S. Marine who was court-martialed for posting a Bible verse. You may have heard that there was religious persecution in the military. Wait till you hear this. Whatever you do, don't touch that dial. This from the You Can't Make It Up file, or WTH, or whatever else you're thinking. U.S. Marine appeals court-martial for posting Bible verse. Lance Corporal Monifa Sterling was convicted last February for not following orders to remove small strips of paper with a scripture verse from the book of Isaiah she had taped to her computer. The courts found that other Marines who might pass by her desk could be exposed to biblical quotations. An odd choice of words that makes the Bible text sound like radioactive waste or nerve gas, or I was going to say, or STDs. I don't know. Got me all worked up. I just banged the microphone. I mean, this is ridiculous. A Liberty Institute attorney, Hiram Sasser, pointed out the obvious. Our Marines are trained to deal with some of the most hostile people on the planet. I don't think they're afraid of tiny words on a tiny piece of paper. The subversive text in question read, "No weapon formed against me shall prosper," which to an unbiased observer seems strikingly appropriate for men and women who have pledged their lives in defense of this country. Upon hearing of the court-martial, Christian evangelist Franklin Graham expressed his disgust on Twitter. As a result of the court-martial, Sterling was demoted in rank from Lance Corporal to private and received a dishonorable discharge from the armed services. If the government can order a Marine not to display a Bible verse, they can order her not to get a religious tattoo or to go to church on Sunday, said Liberty Institute attorney Michael Berry. Restricting a Marine's free exercise of religion is blatantly unconstitutional. You have got to be kidding me. We have come so far in a country where the original founders and settlers of this country were fleeing religious persecution from the government. And now we are instituting and institutionalizing religious persecution by the government. Okay, I'm about to blow it. I'm about to blow my stack because the only antidote to this political correct BS is when enough good people stand up and they're pissed off and they stand around a person who is being persecuted and they push back against the persecutor. Here we have the freaking mayor in Houston who told a pastor that he could not preach and wanted to censor his sermon. And you know what stopped that? It wasn't the government, it wasn't tanks, it wasn't troops. It was 50 pastors who took to the streets. And they took to the streets with the conviction and the knowledge that our rights originate from God, from the Creator. That is written right into our founding documents. And this is absolute religious tyranny, and it cannot stand. I was going to be all cool, calm, and collected today. Yeah, stop laughing in there. I mean, what do you think? You were in the military.
I think it's absurd. I can't believe they actually demoted her and kicked her out of the service.
Who in the world? What kind of leadership demotes somebody for standing up for their beliefs and wishing well?
That's weak leadership, but that's exactly why I got out of the Navy when I did.
That's pathetic. That's not even leadership. That's an excuse. It's like what we have in the White House. Oh, speaking of which, let's roll that tape from the newest GOPer. I can't even call him a Republican because I don't even know if there is a Republican Party anymore, but there's a lot of Republican candidates. George Pataki, and I just want you to get a taste of the latest entrant into the presidential 2016 race.
May I also add that I have sped this up so that our listeners do not fall asleep.
Oh, no.
Here we go.
America has a big decision to make about who we're going to be, what we're going to stand for. The system is broken. The question is no longer about what our government should do, but what we should do about our government, about our divided union, about our uncertain future. We are founded on a miracle, a heroic past built on courage, on inventors, visionaries, and heroes, a God-given belief in the nobility of the human spirit, and the fact that liberty is the only way for that spirit to thrive. Washington has grown too big, too powerful, too expensive, and too intrusive. This is exactly what the Founding Fathers feared. They knew all governments had the tendency to grow endlessly and ultimately to take power from the people and give it to themselves, the politicians. It is time to stand up, protect our freedom, and take back this government. I was a Republican governor in a very deep blue state, the state of New York, and I was governor for 3 terms. And it's because, at the end, people realized my vision was not a partisan division, it was a vision about people, about what we could accomplish together. When I got elected mayor, the last thing in the world I thought about is someday I could be governor of New York State. I was this unknown person from Peekskill, not exactly Manhattan or New York City. If you care about people, you don't have to be governor, you don't have to be president, you don't have to be a U.S. senator to try to impact their lives. We can pass all the laws in the world, have all the rules and regulations, but unless we have men and women like you prepared to risk your lives to defend this country, they don't mean anything. God bless you all, and lunch is on me. We have always understood that we have a common background and a common destiny. And when we stand together, we can accomplish anything. I saw that on the streets of New York in the days and weeks after September 11th. We understood we were all Americans who had been attacked and were going to rise up together, and we did. We need to recapture that spirit, that sense that we are one people. When we do, we will stop empowering politicians and empower ourselves with the opportunities to have an unlimited, bright future. We the people, not Washington, are equipped to lead this nation. We the people can make a difference. We the people are what make this nation great.
When we stand together, Americans can accomplish anything.
We are all in this together, and let us all understand that what unites us is so much more important than what might seem superficially to divide us. If we are to flourish as a people, we have to fall in love with America again.
It's official. Mr. Rogers is running for president. just speechless. I'm sorry. I have never heard so many cliches, and I have never heard them expressed with so little passion and conviction. He must have a really good teleprompter, is about all I'm going to say about his entire race. But
well, and the part when he said, lunch is on me, and thank you for, the ones that would serve, they were all senior citizens.
These are people who have already served.
They've served.
They've paid. And he was making reference to a quote by a great orator. And if you're going to be president, you need to be a great orator. That's simply it. You can hate Barack Obama, but he was a great orator. Abraham Lincoln was a great orator. And Ronald Reagan was one of the greatest because he not only knew what to say, but he knew how to say it. He knew how to communicate, and he could touch something deep inside you and put into words beliefs that you didn't even know you had. And those are the kind of people who should be running for president. And we will be playing you a clip from someone who is an outlier in this whole race, but one of the most interesting candidates, and certainly one of the most presidential sounding candidates. We'll be playing that for you right after this break. 323-746-TALK. 323-746-8255. Hey, if you find yourself in my hometown of Twin Peaks, don't leave without stopping by the Grill at the Antlers Inn. It's right in the heart of Twin Peaks. They serve dinner every night. They're right there at Highway 189 and Bear Springs Road. They have the best steaks, the best sushi. No matter what you have, make sure you call ahead for a reservation. 909-336-2600. 909-336-2600. And tell them Tim Donnelly sent you. So you heard that Mr. Rogers has jumped in the race, but I have to laugh a little bit. I'm just gonna before we play this clip, I'm gonna read you something a little bit. Another headline. You know it's presidential election season when people like New Jersey Governor Chris Christie do a flip-flop. I met Chris Christie at the Republican Governors Association when I was running for governor. I sat in a seminar where he preached, where he talked, where he advocated, where the Republican Governor's Manual, which I still have, had examples for how to undermine and make people who oppose Common Core feel like a complete idiot, how to destroy them publicly, embarrass and humiliate them as some kind of a Tea Party crackpot. These are actual words in their guide, the Republican Governor's Election Manual. And you don't get one of those unless you actually go there as a gubernatorial candidate. I think they were horrified that I showed up because I actually believe in things. And instead of arguing with them there, I listened. And I took notes. And of those who were most passionate at denouncing those who had concerns about Common Core, about increasing government control, about instituting a completely untested set of standards, all of a sudden he's done a flip-flop. So we now have a flip-flopper. I wouldn't want to be anywhere near, the edge of the pool when that man does a cannonball, but he did a flip-flop. And somehow he thinks that's going to help him. I don't think it will. But without any further ado, I want to roll a clip. And I want you to listen to somebody who knows how to communicate passion, conviction, ideas, and solutions with very few words.
And joining me now is Republican presidential candidate Carly Fiorina, who is here in South Carolina as well today. Ms. Fiorina, thank you very much for being with us.
It's great to be with you, Andrea.
You were really the breakout star, according to all reports from Iowa last weekend, the biggest crowds, especially when you went after Hillary Clinton. Is that because you're the only woman in the Republican field that you feel enabled to go after, or what is the strategy here?
It's interesting. I come from a world where titles are just titles and talk is just talk. It's only in politics where titles and words mean a lot. In the rest of the world, it's actually about what have you done? You speak louder than words. People want to know, are your words and your actions consistent, and are they consistent over time? And so I think when 82% of the American people now believe that there is a professional political class more interested in preserving its own power and privilege than it is in serving the American people, people expect basic questions to be asked of anyone running for president. What have you done? Are you trustworthy? Are you transparent? Will you answer questions?
She's had a lifetime, though, in public service.
Yes, she has.
Going back to before she was First Lady in Arkansas, she can argue that she's got a record on women's issues, from the Beijing Women's Conference to all of her work with the Children's Defense Fund, going up through the Senate, Senator from New York. That's a record. Secretary of State. Well, how do you compare yourself to her?
First I would say that, yes, she did. She said many wonderful things at the Beijing Women's Conference, and she has, without a doubt, been a role model and a woman to be greatly admired by many women around the world. It's also true that as Secretary of State, she took women's rights and human rights off the table for discussion with China. It's also true as Secretary of State that she called Bashar al-Assad a positive reformer. It's also true that in 2011, when she was Secretary of State, she said that Iraq was a free, stable, sovereign nation, and now we have a nation falling apart, Iranian influence growing, ISIS growing. It's true that she said that she could reset our relationship with Russia, and Vladimir Putin is on the march. So I think all of those things I just named go fundamentally to what is her track record.
You could also argue that a lot of Republicans in the White House and in Congress supported those policies.
Absolutely.
Waged the war in Iraq.
That's right. And by the way, every single Republican candidate has been asked about their vote for the war in Iraq. The one person who's not been asked that question, because she won't answer the question, is Hillary Clinton. But one person who was on the job in 2011 when Iraq started to fall apart was not the Republican nominees or candidates for president. It's Hillary Clinton. She hasn't been asked yet. What would she do now in Iraq?
Well, she actually was asked, and she did say last week in New Hampshire that it was a mistake, her vote in Iraq. She wrote that in her book. So she's spoken of that in New Hampshire and in Iowa.
But she hasn't said
what, she hasn't had a news conference.
She hasn't said what happened from 2011 when both she and President Obama declared victory in Iraq. They declared victory in Iraq in 2011. She was the Secretary of State. No one is declaring victory in Iraq now. What happened? What would she do? What would she have done?
What would you do now against ISIS? I would do very specific things. First, instead of having a Camp David conference to talk our Arab allies into a bad deal with Iran, I would have had a Camp David conference to talk with our Arab allies about how we can support them to fight ISIS. Let me give you very specific examples. The Kurds have been asking us to arm them for 3 years. We still have not. The Jordanians have been asking us to provide them with bombs and materiel. We know King Abdullah of Jordan. I've known him for many years. He took the appropriate leadership steps when a Jordanian pilot was burned alive. He was here in this country asking us for bombs and materiel. We haven't provided him with any of them. He's now looking to China for that. The Egyptian president, a very brave and pious Muslim who has said there is a cancer in the heart of Islam, has asked us to share intelligence. We are not. The Turks have asked us to help them topple Bashar al-Assad. We are not. There are a whole set of things that we've been asked to do by our allies who know this is their fight, and we're not doing any of them. So I would hold a summit and talk with them about that.
And what about the issue of Hillary Clinton saying she represents everyday Americans? Here she's talking about equal pay. Do you support equal pay for women?
Of course I support equal pay for equal work. And that's why in 1963, when a law was passed guaranteeing that if a woman is being discriminated against in the workforce purely because of her gender, she should take every advantage of the law. But I also know this, a seniority system, which exists in the federal government, that allows a man to watch pornography all day long in the federal government and earn the same pay, pension, and benefits as a woman sitting next to him trying to do a good job. That is not equal pay for equal work. And the seniority system and the federal government that promotes that seniority system and the unions as well, they're not willing to talk about that. So before a federal government or Hillary Clinton, who by her own measures is not paying women equally in her own office, nor is President Obama, before they lecture others, maybe they ought to look into their own offices or look into the seniority system in the federal government.
Are you being discriminated against by the Republican National Committee trying to keep you and others who haven't run before perhaps and don't have the name identification and the poll results yet? Are you being discriminated against by being kept out of the initial debate?
Why do you assume I'm going to be kept out? The debates are not for another 11 weeks. I'm actually glad to have a goal. I'm glad to have clarity about what it takes to get to that stage, and I will work very hard to meet the goal.
Love her. Love her. Stay tuned. Hey, if you like shooting as much as I do, you've probably been to a lot of ranges. Unless you visited Burro Canyon Shooting Park, you've never seen anything like it. On the way there, you'll find yourself taking pictures as you traverse the majestic Azusa Canyon and wind your way up into the Angeles National Forest. With over 600 acres, including 19 private ranges, there's something for everyone. There's rifle and pistol ranges for beginners, right up to advanced shooters. And there's plenty of spaces to shoot sporting clay. You can make a family day of it, or you can bring a group for team building exercises. Bring a picnic lunch. On the weekends, they provide lunch. And don't worry, they always have ammo in case you forget yours or run out. One thing I can guarantee is that once you visited my friends at Burro Canyon Shooting Park, you'll be hooked and you'll keep coming back. BurroCanyon.com is their website, or call them at 626-910-1344, 626-910-1344. Hey, if you're just tuning in, we played an extraordinary clip from Carly Fiorina, former CEO of Hewlett-Packard. She was being interviewed by some MSNBC hack, I forget her name, but she was so pathetic. The woman kept trying to defend Hillary and make Hillary into something she isn't. Meanwhile, back in California, but it actually happened right after it happened in South Carolina. This interview took place outside of an event where Hillary was speaking. That's the funny thing. She went there, sought the press while Hillary is dodging the press, and she had such command And isn't that what you wanted, a commander-in-chief? I mean, somebody who's going to lead the country? We're going to have to replay that clip at some point, because I've never heard in such a short piece of footage. What was that, like 6 minutes? I think it was 6 minutes exactly. You heard someone who intimately knew all of the other leaders of any significance on the world stage related to the issues that were being brought up. She had solutions. She had optimism. She also tore Hillary from limb to limb without being mean. I don't know if you noticed that. Did you notice how she wasn't being mean? I mean,
no, she wasn't being mean. I think she was very stern and she was very confident.
Well, she was confident and she was competent in that she said, hey, look, Hillary, when Hillary claims to be a champion of women's rights, but when she's sitting down with the Chinese, she takes women's rights and women's issues off the table. Okay. So when you're in a tough crowd and you don't want to be criticized and you don't want to have an uncomfortable conversation, you just abandon everything you say you believe in? That's basically what Carly just said. And the Middle East is now a massive disaster. It's arguably a huge mess. And then she brought up Russia. Because Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State. She's supposed to be in command. She's supposed to be in control. She's supposed to be putting her stamp on our foreign policy. That's a cabinet level position. That's a constitutional office. And instead, she just took a pass on all the hard stuff. And then when she was quite queried on Benghazi, she said, it doesn't even matter. What difference does it make? Well, what difference does it make? You give me a choice between Hillary and Carly. Hands down, I guarantee you the vast majority of Americans, if they heard that clip, if the news media would actually cover Carly the way they cover Hillary, she'd be the next president of the United States. Hey, speaking of competent women who are in command of the facts, we are going to bring on a friend of the Tim Donnelly Show who has been a hawk on the SB 277 forced vaccinations issue. Welcome back to the show, Heather Hawks.
Thank you.
And forgive the pun.
Yeah, I know, right?
Hey, you know what? We just figure, why not have fun while we are defending freedom and taking back our fundamental rights from a government run amok?
Hey, if I lose my sense of humor, I'm going to lose everything at this point, Tim, so I appreciate it.
Exactly. So there's been some movement with SB 277. It has now crossed over to the Assembly, and I believe it's only going to be heard by one committee. Is that correct?
Yeah, so what we expected was that it was going to go to rules, and they were really kind of vague with when it was going to go to rules, and we were doing the petitioning with fax and email and calls and saying, get it triple referred, it affects education, it needs to be heard by judiciary, also appropriations if you can, kind of stuff. And this morning we saw that it was reviewed by the Rules Committee, and it's only going to the House Committee in the Assembly.
Yeah, okay. So this is fun because I actually get to share my own experience. I was on the Rules Committee, and I don't know why they let me on there, but you get an insight into how the whole building works. And let me tell you, the Rules Committee didn't review the piece of legislation. Rules Committee meetings last somewhere between 30 seconds and 2 minutes. That's it. Literally. And we push a button and vote yes or no on a massive number of bills to refer them to committees. But when the Democrats start to face opposition, instead of playing by the rules, which, and by the way, the Rules Committee does have a set of rules to which they say they're going to govern the body, the assembly, the people. When they don't like the rules, they just change them. Or ignore them, or void them, or run roughshod over them. But the bottom line is they don't like the public scrutiny, and that means that we, the people, are having an effect. Heather, it means that when we gathered outside of their enclave in Anaheim, where they were feting themselves and gorging on steak and lobster while pretending to represent the common, average, ordinary Californian, they didn't like having 1,000 or 1,200 or 1,500 people outside demanding that we get a choice and that they respect our rights.
Yeah, we definitely felt that. We felt the sort of the way everything was being handled shifted after the Democratic convention.
That means we're being effective. So, we've got to continue to be effective. We're going to have Caitlin Obelski, I'm probably saying that wrong, on later today talking about an amendment that has been put forth and that we're trying to get someone to carry up there. But I think we need to have a big rally. I think we need to put pressure on them. I think we need to get 5,000 people to surround that Capitol and shake that building and let them know that we are not going to have our rights infringed, period.
Yeah, we're working. I mean, that was our first plan. After we found out this morning, that was the immediate next step, was start planning the rally. So I'm glad to hear you say that. It makes me feel like, okay, we're going to continue to do what we should be doing. It's hard to know in something like this what the best move is. So I really appreciate you saying that, because that lets me know we're doing the next thing that we can do.
Well, there's a lot of people thinking that. I've talked to people all over the state today, and preparations are being put in place. And this is not, you're not going there to just quietly stand in the hallway in the summer heat and be ignored. We're talking about people showing up, surrounding the building. There'll be a place where you go, but then strategically filing in the building, making their voice heard in the hearing room, and the media will not be able to ignore that. That's the key, because they can ignore us in Anaheim, they can ignore us in little committee rooms, but they can't ignore when you shake that building to its core. And as a former assemblyman, I can tell you, there were times when there would be rallies outside that were so loud that we would actually stop and go to the window and see what was going on.
Wow, that's good to hear. I mean, there's part of that concern. This is, we've had some really big numbers up there. I mean, we've had up to 1,500 people up there before, and we filed through and opposed, and they didn't do anything. But the media is really where we're leaning to for this to get exposure, because that's become the primary concern here is the behavior of how they've handled this thing going through the different committees. Well,
look, here's the thing with the media. The media is like think of human nature. If you talk to somebody and it's a person who is no longer friends within a certain group, then you're sort of ostracized for doing that. If you talk to, and the same is true in politics, if the media gives a spotlight, a camera, a voice to a thorn in the side of the ruling party, which is the Democrats, the what I call the Marxist mafia that control California's capital, then what happens is then they'll cut off access to you, and you won't be able to interview the powerful people who make everything tick in California. Well, if we hold a big rally, then we give them cover. If we hold a massive rally, they can't ignore it. And that's something that's made for television versus going into a hearing. That's more one-on-one with those who are sitting in that hearing room.
Right.
So strategically, it's just a very different approach, and I just think it's time. And I certainly think, given the rally and the numbers that were in Anaheim, given the growing opposition, growing into a movement across the state. I mean, you've even said it. There's so many groups you can't keep track. You've got the Tea Party, you've got the ACLU, you've got hardcore conservatives and communists all on the same page saying, "Hey, we want the freedom to choose."
Yes.
Well, you got me all worked up now. I was trying to be all laid back and laissez-faire, and
I feel like I'm being quiet now because I've been so worked up all day that it's hard. It's like I have to be calm when I'm speaking, but in my mind, this is very, very difficult for someone new to politics to learn the process of getting comfortable with, if you can ever get comfortable with how this stuff just works sometimes. And it just doesn't seem like the way it's supposed to work, but I can't change it, So
it doesn't. You're right. I'm not new to politics anymore, but I felt that way then, and now I understand the process, and I look for the choke points and the leverage points because I'm used to being in the minority. But there is a way to mount what Jenna Elfman described as effective opposition, and effective opposition means that you get the job done and you don't give up until you have defended your freedom and gotten your government to actually listen and rule at your consent. And that's what we're going to do. Heather, thank you for your leadership and for your absolute commitment to this cause. And thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for talking to me, and, thanks for everything. I really appreciate your help.
Hey, you carry on. Godspeed. And to all of you listening, 323-746-TALK is how you get involved. We're going to keep you up to date. We're going to organize this state. And this is one of the issues we're going to organize on. 323-746-8255. You are tuned to the Radio Free California Network, where we expose the hypocrisy of the left wherever it may occur, and we are always on the watch for government abusing its power and abusing the citizens. We have been keeping you up to date just before the break on SB 277, which has only been referred in the Assembly to a single committee. And that's unprecedented. When it's heard by 3 committees on the Senate side, it's usually heard by 3 committees on the Assembly side. That's just how it goes. It's parity, and it gives individual citizens multiple chances to make their case, but they don't want that. They don't like citizens getting involved and making them feel the pain because they won't see the light. But we have a caller who is telling us that government is running amok and giving out tickets for people washing their cars. April from Victorville, thanks for coming on the Tim Donnelly Show.
Hello. I just was getting some rock because I'm trying to avoid any kind of confrontation with the city for water, and we were talking about the warnings and taking showers too long. And the guy that owns the rock place was telling me that they've already started giving tickets to people if they drive by and see you washing your car, water in your yard, and some of it goes into cement or whatever. They're giving people tickets. They're just putting them on the door and then mailing you a copy of the tickets. And he was saying that he's been told by like 5 different people that they've gotten tickets already. And it's like, how do we stop this? I mean, somebody like me, I don't have the money to go to an attorney and fight it because it's the principle of the thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, here you were. And by the way, April, you're going to pick up rock to replace your landscape, right? So that you don't have anything to water, right?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you're doing exactly what Jerry Brown asked. Actually, you're complying, trying to cut your water usage by what, another 25%?
Yes.
And the drought police, the water cops, are running around slapping tickets on doors right and left. See, this is called government gone wild. When government, I think Bethany you almost spit out your drink when I was talking. But what once they get a revenue source, they get addicted to it. And so expect this to ramp up. But look, the only thing you can do is educate yourself, is arm yourself with the facts, by the way. I'm not talking about arm yourself, even though I believe in arming yourself for different reasons.
Right.
But you need to organize with your friends and neighbors, just as individuals, come together as a group. And if I were in your shoes and I were leading such a group, I would show up at the city hall or the courthouse or whatever. They're usually pretty close together. And I would have about 10 or 15 or 50 of my closest friends. And I would, if I got a ticket, I would make 50 copies of it. And I would have all of them walk in with me, and I would rip it in half and throw it at them and walk out. I mean, this is ludicrous. And so the answer to this is exercising your right of civil disobedience, of protest, of taking a stand. Now, what's the worst they're going to do? Come and increase the fine? Or are they going to come and take away your water, your spigot? I mean, for crying out loud, where does it stop?
Well, exactly. And it's like, I'm already trying to be compliant and all that stuff. But it's like, whose fault is this? This is not my fault. I mean,
well, hold on. That's your first mistake. Why are you trying to be compliant? What did you do wrong?
Well, I'm trying to be compliant more or less just because I'm getting older and I'm tired of do yard maintenance, but I also don't want, I own my own property. I don't want to lien on my property because of this, but it's just, it's ridiculous. And you betcha I am going to be at the next city council meeting.
Yeah, it's Jerry Brown that did not manage the resources of this state. He has been our cotton-picking governor for 5 years, going on 6. And he hasn't done a damn thing. He hasn't built the dams we need. He hasn't increased water storage. He wants to build that damn train. You got me all worked up now, April. Thanks for calling. Thanks for calling. Godspeed.
Don't you think it's about time you treat yourself or someone you love to something very special? Well, Ozell Jewelers, the finest jewelry store in the high desert, is known throughout the high desert for having the largest variety of fine-looking jewelry and gifts for every special occasion. Ozell custom designs and manufactures their own jewelry, so you'll be able to find exclusive, one-of-a-kind, stunning styles you won't find anywhere else in Southern California. If you're looking for fine jewelry at unbeatable prices, Ozell Jewelers is the place to go. Show appreciation to that special person in your life with something special to cherish forever. Ozell Jewelers, voted best jewelers in the high desert by the Daily Press regularly for years. Ozell Jewelers has been putting smiles on high desert faces for over 30 years. Ozell Jewelers in Rancho Cucamonga, Palm Desert, and Amargosa Road by Red Lobster in Victorville. Ozell Jewelers.
Hey, welcome back to the Radio Free California Network, where we've been having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. Last segment, Bethany Nosko, the Noskinator, that was pretty epic. She almost spit all over the board because she had just taken a drink, and I said something so compelling and funny. I think we're going to make it a new segment.
Well, I think for Halloween, I'm going to be Government Gone Wild.
Government Gone Wild. I mean, you couldn't come up with a better segment name for what we're talking about now. Yes, we are going back to that egregious bill that has united. You heard earlier John Fleischman, who is ardently one of the most conservative commentators in the state of California. You heard Heather Hawks, who's a mom, never been involved in politics. I don't know what her politics are. We've never discussed it because it doesn't matter. But we have on the Radio Free California Newsmaker line a young lady that I contacted this morning after seeing a press release. She is an attorney and she's an attorney from Berkeley, has a very impressive bio, and has written an amendment to SB 277 that would basically hold the vaccine makers accountable for the injury that their products might do to individuals. Because right now, our government protects them. It's like the mafia. They protect their own. And so we have Caitlin Obolsky on the line from Berkeley. Welcome to the Tim Donnelly Show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on. And, you know, you told me when I first talked to you that you, first of all, you're a mom, and you have vaccinated your children.
Yes.
And you homeschool. You choose to homeschool. Both you and your husband are attorneys.
Yes.
And you brought up the fact that you used to be a Democrat, and you were a pretty involved Democrat.
Yes. I was a lifelong Democrat. Before I could even vote, volunteered to be a poll monitor. I was a congressional intern for Tom Lantos. And this bill basically showed me that the Democratic Party does not care about me or my family. And so last month, I wrote an open letter to the Democratic Party, and I said, because of you, I'm now a Republican, and I've received my voter registration confirmation in the mail, and I look forward to figuring out who I'm going to vote for, because it's not going to be Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, you were saying that when Hillary made a comment and basically endorsed SB 277 and vaccinations for all, that really set you off.
Yeah, apparently she made this comment earlier, but it's been making the rounds on Twitter. It is something to the effect of, the world is round, vaccines work, grandmother knows best. And, I mean, could you have a better example of paternalism? I mean, here it's maternalism, but I will be deciding what's best for my family, not the government, and certainly not people who write bills like SB 277 that have open-ended clauses that say, and any other vaccine we ever feel like, the end.
Yeah, and you've got no recourse. You know, I can't believe that the party of pro-choice has become the party of no choice. And, you know, let me just say this and then we'll move on. But I was one of the ringleaders in the legislature against AB 2109. And we held a rally where we literally had hardcore conservatives and communists. We had ACLU, Tea Party. We had every walk of life, every ethnic background, every economic background, and every political persuasion. But they were united on one thing, which was that this was about freedom. For some, it was about religious freedom.
Right.
For some, it was about personal freedom. And for some, it was about the freedom of parents to decide what is best for their child. And earlier today, you probably weren't listening to the show up there in Berkeley because I think you might have your hands full. We got a great picture of you with your daughter, son?
That's my son. He's 15 months. He's my youngest.
Yeah. That's a great picture. But we had John Fleischman on, who is a very conservative commentator, and he made the point, which many people made at the rally outside of the Democrat convention, the Democrat state convention there in Anaheim, which was, look, what if we went along, we vaccinated one of our children, and we had severe reactions? There's no recourse. There's nothing we can do. So what are we going? We're not going to vaccinate our second child. And we want that freedom to be able to do that. Where there's a risk, there has to be a choice. That's what was being chanted at that rally. And you are trying to provide some kind of like a hammer to make them understand what this is really about. Explain your because it's beautifully crafted, this amendment that you drew up.
Can I quote you from Roe before we move on from that?
Please do.
Okay, so this is straight from Roe v. Wade, as everybody knows that case, but it's not only about one particular medical choice, it's about every medical choice. And it says, freedom of personal choice in matters of marriage and family life is one of the liberties protected by the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. This is Roe v. Wade. So, going from there, the amendment I drafted came from, this deep study of the issues that are involved, and also, like you mentioned, my husband's an attorney, and he's a consumer plaintiff's attorney, so he literally sues manufacturers. He focuses on women law, so he does car manufacturers, and we were talking about the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act and the related court system that they've created. And right in the middle of the bill, it says, no discovery shall be allowed. Now, for non-lawyers, what discovery is basically when lawyers ask the other side for a document or some sort of information, and that's how you really prove what happened. And the fact that there's no discovery allowed in this process, and also there's no judge, you also don't have a jury, and the Supreme Court ruled in 2011 that all design defect claims are completely preempted by decisions made in the vaccine court.
Right. So basically what you're saying is this doesn't go to regular court. Most people don't even know that. If your child is injured, if your child is injured by a vaccination, there's nobody for you to sue.
Right. If your child is injured or dies, all claims for more than $1,000 must go through this system, and they have a set amount that they will pay you, which for injury-related death is $250,000. That's how much your child is worth to Congress if they die from a vaccine injury. They may get other compensation, but that's literally the maximum for that particular issue that comes up. So I was thinking about these issues, and my husband said there's no way they could do that. So I thought, how can I bring awareness to the fact that this is so unfair? Because if your child's not vaccine injured, you probably, may not know this. Because why would you? Why would you think about suing a vaccine manufacturer? All we hear about is how safe and wonderful they are. So I was looking and trying to figure out how to draft this amendment. And what I discovered is that there's existing law in the California Civil Code, which has almost the exact same language that I used, except it refers to tobacco makers. So under California law, if you read this Consumer Protection Amendment, it states, there will be no statutory bar under California law for vaccine manufacturers. So if the legislators do not agree to this amendment, you can sue a tobacco maker for suing your child, but you cannot sue a vaccine manufacturer for suing your child in California.
And let's be clear. You have a choice about smoking. You don't have a choice about whether or not your child is going to take the 35 courses of vaccination by the time they are 2 years old if you want them to attend a public or private school in the state of California.
Any school.
Any school.
Any school. The only option is to homeschool, which, what kind of an option is that? You should be allowed to reach decisions by yourself because they're best for your family. Since when did California become the decision maker in regards to health, in regards to education? It's really sickening, honestly.
Well, and look, this comes down to control, and it comes down to when you increase control over the people, then you need regulators because you've passed regulations and new laws. And so then when you have regulators, in many cases, They form into public sector unions, which then legally bribe politicians to increase regulations on us. And they look for any chance in the headlines for any kind of a crisis. If there's a gun shooting, they want more gun control. If there's anything to do with like the measles, the outbreak, no, they don't want to shut down our borders. They don't want to actually enforce those laws. They want to take away your right to choose what's best for your child. And a whole lot of Americans, and Californians in particular, are reacting, and there's a movement growing against this.
Right. And like you said, the measles epidemic, for example, if you look at the Senate analysis when they voted on this, it says a majority of the measles cases were in adults, not even in children.
Yeah. And at least one of them was someone who had come into the country legally, mind you. They had flown in, but they brought measles here. And that's a risk of living in a society where we don't wall people out. We want visitors. We want tourists. We want you to come here and spend your money. And, you know, we do not have a problem with diseases in California. We have largely wiped out almost everything. And you not vaccinating your second child or first child or whatever it is that works for you is not a threat to that. Hey, we've got to take a quick break. Caitlin, can I put you on hold?
Okay.
Hey.
Yes.
It's great to have Caitlin Obolsky on, who's a lawyer who's drafted an amendment that's going to get the attention of our government in Sacramento. More coming up after the break. Hey, if you find yourself in my hometown of Twin Peaks, don't leave without stopping by the grill at the Antlers Inn. It's right in the heart of Twin Peaks. They serve dinner every night. They're right there at Highway 189 and Bear Springs Road. They have the best steaks, the best sushi. No matter what you have, make sure you call ahead for a reservation. 909-336-2600. 909-336-2600. And tell them Tim Donnelly sent you. Hey, you know something is brewing when Republicans and Democrats get together against the political establishment, which in California are the Democrats. And we have on the line with us Caitlin Obolsky, who is an attorney from Berkeley, who wrote an amendment to hold the vaccination makers accountable and wake up enough Californians so they understand that the right to protect your own child, to choose your own child's medical care, particularly when it comes to vaccinations, is at risk. And you could hear in the background one of Caitlin's children.
Sorry.
That's all right. We love kids here at the Tim Donnelly Show, and we love freedom. I mean, that's what we're talking about. And, you know, you have taken an interesting action because most of us are not attorneys. We don't even understand how the legal system works. We don't know how to, and what you did is you grabbed the language that was in California code already that essentially allows individuals to sue tobacco makers, cigarette makers, and hold them accountable. And so now you're saying this should apply to vaccination makers rather than have it go to this vaccination court where the government basically protects them and limits how much exposure they have.
Right. And, you know, one of the things that I've thought about is the people who support this current vaccine court say, well, if you take away their immunity from liability, then they're not going to want to make vaccines. And so I thought about this argument, and what I realized, and my friend from North Carolina brought up, is Congress pays tobacco farmers not to grow tobacco. So why can't we pay the vaccine makers to defend these lawsuits if they're truly frivolous? you know.
Well, look, if you have a frivolous lawsuit, if you have a frivolous lawsuit,
right,
it's up to
the dismissed anyway.
It's up to, well, it won't
right.
be. It might not be in California, but it's up to the judge. The judge has an obligation to do that.
Right. You have a judge. Right. But my point is that there are other ways to encourage vaccine makers to continue producing these products, because we vaccinate. I want vaccines for my children. In consultation with our doctor, we've decided on that. But you can't take away my legal rights if they're going to kill my kid. And we know that this happens. That's why we have the court in the first place, because the Supreme Court said vaccines are unavoidably unsafe. Therefore, we're going to not hold them liable when they kill your child. And now with SB 277, you don't get that choice.
Well, and it's amazing because we are talking about choice. We are talking about freedom. And it's interesting that you vaccinate. I vaccinated my children. Jenna Elfman vaccinated her children. And yet we are speaking out, maybe from different points of view, different walks of life, speaking out in defense of the freedom to choose, of the liberty that is at stake. And you know, I don't know if it gets under your skin the way it gets under mine, but when I hear the government say you will comply and we're going to force you into compliance or else.
You know what they said on Twitter? They said parents do not have the right to refuse medical treatment for their children. This is the people who are fighting for this bill.
Well,
I'm not even joking.
Yeah,
I wish I was joking.
There was a mother in Sacramento County who took her child out of a hospital where she didn't like the medical care, and they sent the cops after her. They sent and the next day 5 cops broke down her door, and she put it on videotape. All because CPS has so much authority, and there's no control and no accountability. And I don't want to give my government that much control over my child. Because, you know, in the end, all of them will go back to their lives and say, oh, that's a tragedy. There's another kid that died from vaccinations.
Right.
Oh, gee, that's really bad. For you, it's the end of your life. Something happens to your child, you grieve for the rest of your life. And you ought to have that choice.
$250,000. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just finishing by saying, with this kind of risk, you have to have a choice.
Right. And one of the things you brought up was about this vaccination schedule that's required. And so one of the things in particular that I think most people do not realize is if you choose to not have one of the 10 required vaccinations, you are not in compliance with this law.
And they consider you unvaxxed.
Right. You're considered unvaccinated, and you cannot enroll your child in school. So one of these vaccinations that's required is hepatitis B, which is, considered a sexually transmitted disease, but can also be spread through biting. I've talked to pediatricians about this. And they typically give it to your child when they're basically almost just after they're born. And for our family, when I was writing my legal research paper on the substantive due process rights of parents to refuse immunization, I found a case of a child who, it turns out, hepatitis B shots have wheat ingredients in them. And this newborn child got this hepatitis B shot, and it turns out had an anaphylactic reaction to the wheat, which you wouldn't know because they were just born.
Sure.
And unfortunately, this child suffered needlessly and died eventually. So for us, we decided to delay the hepatitis B vaccination until our son was 2 months old. But if I was working in any corporate law firm and I took my 6-week FMLA, I wouldn't be able to put my baby in daycare and go work as a lawyer. So this isn't only about not doing any vaccines at all. It's literally any choice to change the schedule.
See, that's a fact that has not been widely distributed and widely known because the media has really kept a lid on this, other than what I call the media Muslim, or I'm sorry, the media measles epidemic. It was like the media created it.
Right. There's another bill that's pending. It's called SB 792, and it requires the full schedule of vaccinations for any in-home daycare providers or daycare workers. And I was asking on Twitter, I said, have there been any cases of documented outbreaks of measles in daycares? And do you know how many there have been?
No.
One. In the entire state of California, there has been, to my knowledge, maybe there's others, this is to my knowledge, there has been one outbreak inside of a measles with daycare. And do you know where they think they originated it from?
Where?
A high school basketball.
What?
High school basketball coach.
Wow.
And now they're going to make it a crime for daycare providers, who, by the way, here's something I think a lot of people take for granted. If you want to know your daycare provider's vaccination status, you can ask them, and they can tell you. You don't need to bring in the state of California to mandate and completely remove choice from grown adults to decide.
Caitlin, we got to end it there. Thank you for coming on today. Great points you made, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Godspeed. Hey, stay tuned to the Tim Donnelly Show. More coming up after the break. If you've been listening long to the Tim Donnelly Show, you know that we talk constantly about defending freedom and about defending our natural inalienable rights. The Firearms Policy Coalition is a partner of the Tim Donnelly Show. But more than that, they're on the front lines every day in Sacramento and all across the state, in the courts, defending your Second Amendment right. That is a natural right that the government merely acknowledged in the Second Amendment. If you value your freedom, then you need to join Firearms Policy Coalition. Become a member. I'm a member, and I'm happy to support an organization that is doing such an incredible job. Go to joinfpc.org. The Tim Donnelly Show sent you. Or go to timdonnellyshow.com and click on the FPC link to make it easy. But whatever you do, join today. FPC.org. That sounds like Hotel California.
Try again.
Oh, no way. No way.
It's Eagles, Life in the Fast Lane.
Oh, I got the Eagles part right. Wow, I'm going to have to work on that. Hey, obviously, if you were listening in the last segment, if you weren't, you need to go to the podcast. But it was just an incredible interview with a Berkeley attorney who is also married to an attorney who was a Democrat up until not too long ago, until she realized the government was the greatest threat to her children, to their medical health, and to her freedom to choose what's right for her kids. Simple as that. This SB 277 is bringing together, it's forced vaccinations. The government wants you to comply or you become a criminal. Your kid doesn't get to go to school. You're denied a basic, fundamental right, which is insane. I mean, and it's all coming from people are starting to discover that the man, the establishment, the political power class is as much Democrat as it is Republican. And there are some Republicans who are fighting. The vast majority of Republicans have voted against this intrusion, this government interference. There's some who voted for it. And it's going to the Assembly. It is not going to go to the Assembly without a big fight. And we will be at the forefront of that. We will bring you updates as needed and let you know all the latest information so that you can actually do something about it. Because at the Radio Free California Network, we're not just about informing you. We're about engaging you. And that means getting you into the fight. We're not going to get you into every fight. We're going to get you into the fights that matter. We're going to get you into the key fights that are centered and unified around liberty. And you just heard it. So you have a Democrat that was working in the polls, that volunteered for the Democrat Party, that was a Hillary supporter who has now shunned the Democrat Party, left the Democrat Party. She's become a Republican. I wish her luck there. The Republican Party, there's an incredible article. I'm going to have to get it and read it tomorrow. It takes way too long to go into, about how the Big Ten has collapsed and the Republican Party has become a disaster that stands for nothing. But that's fixable. That's the good news. That's fixable. And I got to tell you, this is not the only issue on which you see Democrats and Republicans coming together. I told you yesterday that President Barack Obama has decided to take control. He's done a power grab over every body of water in the United States of America, including the mud puddle in your backyard. He wants control over every ditch and rivulet and creek and God forbid you have a pond or a pool or something else. But he has given the feared and hated EPA, that's the Environmental Protection Agency, but there are other things that it stands for. It's become an epithet to many people. And he has put it under federal rule under the Clean Water Act. Well, that gives the federal government vast new powers to regulate. And believe me, the EPA has said we're dead serious, and so is the Army Corps of Engineers. We are dead serious about exercising that power. And mind you, I just want you to understand this. That means your government is armed to the teeth, and they are willing to use that power, abuse that power, put a gun to your head, and take control of your water. What was under your control up until this point. Obama could care less. He wants the government to control everything. He loves centralized control. He is a hardcore leftist. And he wants to destroy every vestige of America that is left, every tiny little sanctum of freedom, every bit of liberty that exists in the state of California or the United States of America. He wants control over. Bottom line. I don't know what else to say to let you know, but interestingly enough, he has brought together, there's a dozen Blue Dog Democrats, including a senator that I tried to get on the show today named Joe Donnelly. I figured it'd be kind of cool to have Senator Donnelly on with former Assemblyman Donnelly. And we're going to work on getting him on because he has stood up in principled opposition to this. There is a great deal of concern in a lot of the states that have rural land, and a lot of the states where they're concerned it's going to affect manufacturing and other industries, certainly agriculture. And this is exactly how the left expands its power base. They take over something that they have no right to. Nobody stops them. Then they increase the army that is there to regulate and control you. You heard April from Victorville talking about the government slapping tickets on everybody's door, all because they might have sprayed off their car real quick or something. I mean, you know what? Last time I checked, this was a free effing country. Yeah. The last time I checked, the government doesn't have the right to control what I do. And if I'm paying for my water, if I want to wash my freaking car, that's my freaking business. Especially if I've already reduced my water usage to an acceptable level that I can afford. I didn't create the water crisis. Jerry Brown did. The leftist enviro extremists did. The eco-terrorists, the eco-tyrants, the eco-fascists are the ones who refused to allow the necessary infrastructure to be built in the name of saving the economy. I'm sorry, saving the environment. Well, you know what? You put the environment at risk. You put the country at risk. Because now you're threatening the food supply in the greatest state of the greatest country on the face of this earth. And I am encouraged and excited to see people coming together, whether it's in Washington, D.C., with Democrats joining with Republicans in opposition to this unconstitutional executive power grab on behalf of Obama. It's not the first one he's done, but it might be the first one that we see Democrats and Republicans uniting against Obamacare. Oh, my word. If you're paying attention, Obamacare has become, people are starting to realize it is a disaster. Of course, they're blaming the Republicans, and I alluded to it with John Fleischman. What's Jerry Brown's answer to this disaster where you get more people on the subsidy than you could possibly afford? Oh, well, why don't we go bail out Oregon? Yeah, he's a rational. Well, don't get me started. I'm going to take a call. Hey, we've got Matt from Pinion Hills. Matt,
hello.
welcome to the Tim Donnelly Show.
Yeah, thank you. I'm calling to see what's your opinion on it, Prop 47 and the AB 109 bill.
Yeah, Prop 47 is a retarded piece of legislation. I say retarded with all due respect because I know they banned the use of the word retarded in the state of California because they don't want the government talking about them. But it has actually made it okay and made it a misdemeanor to be in possession of the date rape drug. So now you can have a drug that is only and exclusively used to anesthetize somebody so you can take advantage of them and rape them and commit a felony, which I think is stupid. You can also steal a gun that is worth less than $900 from a citizen, from an individual, and that's only now a misdemeanor instead of a felony. So this is one of the most boneheaded ideas I've ever heard of. AB 109, where you moved all the state prisoners down to the county level and dumped them here, where you know they'll be forced to let them out on the streets, is just an early release program, and it is one of the most irresponsible, dangerous pieces of legislation that has ever been passed in the state of California. That's what I think.
Well, I'm wondering why nobody's really saying anything about the media. They covered up for Governor Brown because that's what I heard.
Yeah,
the crime's going up.
Matt, you're exactly right. They're covering up for Governor Brown just like they cover up for Hillary Clinton. They cover up for anybody who pushes the leftist agenda. And the bottom line is, I don't know if you read the story, but there was an individual, I think it was out on the Central Coast, because I put this up on my Facebook page. This individual was supposed to be kept in jail, and they let him out early because of AB 109. He went home and he raped a 6-month-old child and killed the child. And you know, it's like if this guy had been locked up his full sentence, he wouldn't have been there. He wouldn't have been free to kill and rape and destroy. I can't even describe that. I don't even know what to call that. But that depravity was allowed, and it was encouraged, and it was made possible thanks to Jerry Brown and also Kamala Harris, who fully supports this policy. And she wants to be she wants to be our next U.S. Senator.
Man, we don't need another Feinstein, do we?
No, we don't. Hey, Matt, thanks for the call. We got to take a break. We will take more of your calls when we come up. 323-746-TALK. More of the Tim Donnelly Show. Stay right where you are. Hey, if you like what you've been hearing on the Tim Donnelly Show, then support it. If you own a business, we have a tremendous audience, not only on air, but also online. And we've got a great social media presence, and you can participate in all of that by simply picking up the phone and calling 760-244-4444. That's the office line to Bethany, who can schedule you to come in and record your own commercial, or you can send us a script and I'll read it. Whatever you do, you got to act now, because your future customers are my loyal listeners. We are on the home stretch here at the Radio Free California Network. I am your host, former State Assemblyman Tim Donnelly. I kind of felt like a state assemblyman today. But before I go on, I want to mention one of my favorite sponsors of the Tim Donnelly Show, and that is Burro Canyon Shooting Park. And by the way, if you go there, and if you mention the Tim Donnelly Show, or if you just say the magic word, Tim Donnelly, I'll give you free stuff. Get a free hat, free coffee cup, and, of course, you'll get to shoot in one of the greatest places on the face of the earth. And once in a while, we give out free day of shooting. We did that earlier this week, and we had one lucky winner. We always try to make the questions firearms related and as hard as possible, because we know that you're one of the smartest audiences on earth. And speaking of intelligent people, I am going to bring on a caller from Lake Arrowhead, Cheryl. Cheryl, welcome to the Tim Donnelly Show.
Hi, Tim. Yes, I'm calling in response to the lady lawyer who was speaking about vaccinations. I totally agree that the people need the choice. The parents need the choice about vaccinations. But my comment is going to be, she mentioned homeschooling, and she said, what kind of a choice is that? Well, I want to respond to that. That's probably the best choice any child in this country could have. Homeschooling is a wonderful opportunity for the children to grow up confident and go at their own pace. And there's many resources available for getting curriculum for your child. And there's a Homeschool Legal Defense Association that defends you for a small amount per year. They'll take on any case and help you win it, because there are those foes against homeschooling.
Well, you might be surprised. I wish you'd called in when she was still on the air, because
I tried.
Because she is she's homeschooling her kids.
Oh, good for her.
And here's an interesting thing, Cheryl. I'm pro-life, and she is pro-choice. She is a former Democrat who left the Democrat Party, and yet the government coming in with this bill that has basically turned a whole lot of people who are concerned about vaccinations. And by the way, she vaccinates, but she wants the freedom and wants people to be able to make that decision for themselves. And she's defending something where I think a whole lot of conservatives also feel the same way. God gave children to the parents, not the state.
Yes, although I think California has a law that essentially says California owns the children in this state. Well,
I am a former lawmaker, and I am not aware of that law.
I ran into it many years ago.
But it is certainly unconstitutional, because the children do not belong to the state of California. That is a statist, socialist, communist, dictatorial, totalitarian type mentality. But it's infiltrated our government in California. It's infiltrated our government in Washington, D.C. And it's exciting to see a movement forming where people who come from different viewpoints on various issues can agree on freedom.
Yes. And one more thing about homeschooling, if they just get into it, they'll find out it only takes about 2 hours to give your child a complete education per day, 2 hours per day. When you start subtracting all of the waiting time that children in the public schools have to take to wait for everybody else to get it, to stand in line, and then there's the time, waiting for the bus or to go to school and to go. It's just such a much
Cheryl,
I did it myself.
You make a strong case. We thank you for your commitment to that, to your commitment to liberty, and we thank you for your call.
Thank you, Tim.
You got it. Godspeed.
Bye-bye.
Hey, we have come to the end of the road here at another edition of the Tim Donnelly Show. And this has been a great show today. I mean, one thing I noticed, we didn't get you on the air very much. Does that make it a better show? You were pretty outraged over that illegal immigration stuff.
I was very outraged about it.
Well, we'll have to discuss that tomorrow. Meanwhile, I need to say, hey, I don't do this show alone. I want to thank my wife for letting me do it. My producer, Bethany Nosko, the Noskinator, for being an extraordinary producer. Cassie Cassidy, my intrepid guest booker, who scores all kinds of amazing guests. John and Sean, who do technological wizardry. And you, who are intelligent enough to tune in and make this a better show. Did I do all that 1 minute early?
We're about 45 seconds early.
Well, you know what? I'm encouraged from today, from the calls, from the action, seeing people coming together. It's one thing to have to always come on here and report bad news. It's a great thing when you can bring people together in defense of our freedom, in defense of liberty. You know, it's John F. Kennedy who said, what we need is a nation of Minutemen who not only view the defense of freedom, or who not only take up arms, but make the defense of freedom the general purpose of their daily lives. 3 p.m. tomorrow. God bless and Godspeed.